I never thought I'd be the kind of person to tell a story like this. I'm a photographer, not a spiritual guru or someone who's figured out all the answers to life. But sitting here now, months after it happened, I can't stop thinking about those final days in the snow with a dying creature that most people say doesn't exist. What it taught me in its last hours changed everything I thought I knew about what really matters. The Bigfoot spoke to me before it died. The words weren't clear or perfect, but I understood them. They weren't in English exactly, more like sounds that carried meaning somehow. And once you hear something like that, you can't unhear it. You can't go back to the way you were before. You're changed. Maybe not in ways people can see from the outside, but deep down where it counts, you're different. I've been doing winter photography for about 6 years now. Started when I was 23 and never really stopped. There's something about the silence of snow-covered mountains that pulls me back every year. The way everything looks frozen in time. The way your breath hangs in the air and you can hear your own heartbeat in the quiet. I travel alone most of the time, camping in remote locations where you can go days without seeing another person. It suits me. Always has. I'm not antisocial or anything like that. I have friends back home, a sister I talk to regularly, parents who worry about me going off alone so much. But there's something about being in the wilderness that feels more honest than being around people. A tree doesn't pretend to be something it's not. Snow doesn't lie about its intentions. It's cold and it's beautiful, and that's all it needs to be. People are more complicated. They say one thing and mean another. The wilderness never does that. This particular trip was in mid-February up in the Canadian Rockies. A magazine had hired me for a series on winter wilderness photography. They wanted those pristine landscape shots, the kind where everything looks untouched and peaceful. White expanses broken only by dark trees and rock faces. The kind of photos that make people sitting in warm offices dream about escaping to the mountains, about throwing away their computers and living off the grid. Of course, most of them never will, but the photos let them dream. I rented a cabin at the base of a mountain range. The cabin was basic but functional, wood stove for heat, 2 small rooms, an outhouse in the back, no running water, just a pump. Outside that brought up ice-cold groundwater, perfect for what I needed, which was a place to sleep and store my gear between excursions into the back country. I wasn't planning to spend much time there anyway. The whole point was to be out in the mountains, not sitting by a fire. The first 2 days went well enough. Got some good shots of ice formations along a frozen stream. Dawn breaking over a ridge line, that perfect golden light hitting the snow just right. That blue hour light that only happens in winter when the sun is low and everything takes on this ethereal quality. But by day 3, I felt like I was just repeating the same compositions over and over. Nothing was grabbing me. Nothing felt special or different from what I'd shot 100 times before. The weather forecast looked clear that morning. Not a cloud in the sky. Temperature was supposed to hold steady around 20 degrees. No wind, perfect conditions for a long hike. So I decided to push further up the mountain than I'd gone before. There was a trail I'd been eyeing since I arrived, steep and remote, the kind that doesn't show up on tourist maps, the kind of place where you really commit once you start because turning back takes just as long as pushing forward. But that's where the best shots usually are, the places other photographers don't want to bother reaching. I packed my usual gear that morning. Camera equipment, obviously, my main body and 3 lenses, wide angle for landscapes, telephoto for detail shots, a 50mm for versatility, extra batteries that I kept warm against my body so the cold wouldn't drain them, memory cards, lens cleaning kit, all of it packed carefully in my camera bag with foam inserts to protect everything from impacts. Emergency supplies went in my backpack. First aid kit with bandages, antiseptic, pain medication, 6 energy bars, 2 water bottles, both full, waterproof matches in a sealed container, a small tarp folded tight, emergency blanket that was really just a sheet of reflective material but could save your life in the right situation, paracord, a small knife, everything you need to survive if things go wrong. The kind of gear you hope you never need but would die without. I'd done this dozens of times, knew exactly what to bring, knew how to read weather patterns and ice conditions, knew what tree branches looked like when they were about to drop their snow load, knew how to tell if ice was safe to walk on. I wasn't careless or reckless, just experienced, or at least I thought I was. The morning started perfect, fresh powder maybe 6 inches deep, laid down overnight while I slept. The kind of powder that makes everything look clean and new, clear sky above, that brilliant blue you only get at high altitude where the air is thin. The kind of light that makes everything look magical through a camera lens, everything sharp and clean and perfect. I was hiking up a trail I'd never taken before, stopping every few hundred yards to set up shots. The vista kept getting better as I climbed higher, more mountains appearing in the distance, deeper valleys opening up below. The light kept changing as the sun moved higher, casting different shadows, revealing different textures in the snow. It was exactly what I'd come for. Around 11 in the morning, I heard this sound, low and distant at first, like thunder rumbling on the horizon. Except the sky was completely clear, not a cloud anywhere. Just that perfect blue stretching from horizon to horizon. The sound was coming from above me, from higher up the mountain. I stopped walking and listened, trying to figure out what I was hearing. For a moment, everything was silent. Just me and the mountain and that perfect blue sky, my breath hanging in the cold air, the crunch of snow under my boots as I shifted my weight. Then the sound came again, louder this time. Definitely not thunder, more like a freight train in the distance, or the earth itself groaning. I looked up and saw the entire mountainside above me starting to move. It took my brain a second to process what I was seeing. Snow doesn't just move on its own, mountains don't shift, but this one was. The whole face of the mountain, thousands upon thousands of tons of snow and ice breaking loose all at once, coming straight down the slope, heading directly toward where I was standing. Avalanche. The word hit me like a physical blow. I've heard people say time slows down in moments of crisis, and they're absolutely right. Everything got very sharp and very clear. I could see individual chunks of ice tumbling in the massive wall of white. Could see snow billowing up like smoke as the avalanche consumed everything in its path. Could hear the roar getting louder and louder as thousands of tons of snow accelerated down the mountain toward me. I remember thinking with perfect clarity that I needed to run sideways, perpendicular to the path of the avalanche. Get out of the direct line. You can't outrun an avalanche by going downhill. It moves too fast, 60 miles per hour or more, but you might be able to get out of its path if you move laterally, if you move fast enough, if you're lucky enough. I dropped my camera bag, just let it fall. No time to take it off properly. Every second counted. I ran as hard as I could, my boots punching through the surface snow with every step. Moving was like running through sand. The snow grabbed at my boots, slowed me down. I was moving as fast as I possibly could, but it felt like slow motion, like running in a dream where your legs won't cooperate. The roar was deafening now, so loud I couldn't hear my own breathing. Couldn't hear my heartbeat even though I could feel it pounding in my chest. I could feel the ground shaking under my feet, trembling like an earthquake. Ran maybe 20 feet before the wall of snow hit me from behind. Picked me up like I weighed nothing, like a toy being tossed by a giant. It wasn't like being hit by water. Water you can swim through. You can fight against water. This was solid, dense, like being hit by a freight train made of concrete. The impact knocked all the air out of my lungs. Couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but tumble. I tumbled end over end, thrown and tossed and rolled. Couldn't tell which way was up. Couldn't tell if I was moving or if everything else was moving around me. Just white everywhere. In my eyes, in my nose, in my mouth. I tried to swim, tried to keep my arms moving the way you're supposed to. Create an air pocket in front of your face. Keep moving so you don't get buried deep. But the force was too much. I was completely at the mercy of the avalanche. Just another piece of debris being carried down the mountain, a rock, a tree branch, a person, all the same to the snow, just wait to be moved. Snow forced its way into my nose and mouth. I couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't think. Just tumbled and spun and prayed this wouldn't be how I died. Everything was white, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was buried up to my chest in packed snow. My arms were pinned against my sides, trapped. I couldn't move them at all, couldn't move my legs either, just my head and neck. That was it. Everything else was locked in place by the snow that had packed around me like concrete during the tumble down the mountain. The panic hit me immediately. That primal terror of being trapped. Your whole body screaming to move but nothing responding. Fight or flight kicking in but with nowhere to fight and no way to flee. You read about people being buried in avalanches and you think you understand what that must feel like, but you don't. Not until you're there and your body is demanding that you run, but you physically cannot move. I tried to thrash, tried to force my arms to move, my legs, anything, nothing budged. The snow had packed around me during the violent tumble, compressed by the weight of thousands of tons of snow moving at high speed. It was like being encased in concrete, solid, immovable. I could wiggle my fingers maybe half an inch. That was all. I forced myself to stop, to calm down. Panicking would only make things worse. Panic burns oxygen, and I needed every breath I could get. My chest was compressed by the snow. Each breath was shallow, difficult. I had to focus on staying calm, on breathing slowly and deliberately, on thinking clearly about what to do next. I started testing what I could move. My fingers could barely move them, but they moved. That was something, a place to start. I began working my fingers back and forth inside the packed snow, creating tiny spaces, little pockets of air, working them like I was digging through dirt, one grain at a time. It was impossibly slow, but it was all I could do. It took almost an hour to dig myself out, moving just my fingers at first, then my hands as I created more space around them. Then my wrists, slowly working the snow away from my body one handful at a time. My fingers were numb. I couldn't tell if I was actually accomplishing anything or just going through the motions. Just kept moving them, kept digging, kept working even when it felt hopeless. Finally, I got enough space to pull one arm free. The feeling when that arm came loose was overwhelming, like breaking through to the surface when you've been underwater too long. I pulled the other arm free immediately, used both arms to dig out my torso, scooping snow away as fast as I could. My chest expanded fully for the first time since the avalanche hit. The relief was incredible. Took another 20 minutes to free my legs, had to dig all the way down, clear the snow from around my boots, work my feet loose. By the time I finally pulled myself out of the snow and collapsed on top of the debris field, I was shaking with exhaustion. My whole body hurt. Everything ached like I'd been beaten with hammers. Bruises everywhere. Probably cracked ribs. But I was alive. Somehow, impossibly, I was alive. I lay there on top of the snow for a few minutes, just breathing, looking up at that perfect blue sky. The same sky I'd been admiring an hour ago before everything went to hell. Couldn't believe I was alive. The avalanche should have killed me. Should have buried me so deep nobody would ever find my body. Should have crushed me or suffocated me or both. But somehow I was here. Breathing? Alive, lucky beyond all reason. My camera gear was gone, scattered somewhere under tons of snow, thousands of dollars of equipment just gone. But I didn't care. Equipment can be replaced, lives can't. The only thing I still had was my backpack, still strapped to my back. The shoulder straps had held through the entire tumble. That pack probably saved my life. Gave me something solid to grab onto. Created an air pocket maybe. I don't know, just lucky. I tried to figure out where I was. The landscape looked completely different from before. The avalanche had pushed me about 200 yards down the mountain, maybe more. Trees I'd been hiking past were now above me, way up the slope. The trail was buried under fresh snow. Everything was disorienting. Wrong. I needed to get my bearings. Figure out which direction would take me back to the cabin, how far I'd need to walk. That's when I heard the sound. Low and pained, like groaning, like something in terrible pain, coming from somewhere further down the avalanche debris field, maybe 50 yards away. My first thought was that another hiker had been caught. Someone else trapped in the snow somewhere, someone who needed help, just like I needed help a few minutes ago. I called out, asking if anyone was there, asking if they could hear me. The groaning stopped for a moment, then started again, definitely coming from down the slope, from somewhere in the mess of snow and broken trees and exposed boulders. I started moving toward it, stumbling over the uneven surface, had to climb over fallen trees, navigate around chunks of ice. The groaning got louder as I got closer, more desperate, more pained. I followed the sound down through the debris field, kept calling out, kept asking if they could hear me. No response except that terrible groaning sound, getting louder, getting closer. When I saw it, I stopped dead, maybe 50 feet ahead of me, a massive dark shape half buried in the snow. At first I thought it was a bear. Had to be a bear. We were in bear country, black bears, maybe even grizzlies this far north. Maybe a bear had been denning nearby when the avalanche hit, caught it by surprise, buried it. But as I got closer, moving carefully, watching for any sign of aggression, the proportions were wrong. Too tall, even lying down, way too tall for a bear. The shoulders were too broad, too human-shaped, and the arms were way too long. Longer than any bear's front legs would be. Then I saw the hand, reaching out from the snow, grasping at nothing, grasping at air. 5 fingers clearly defined, each one visible and separate, covered in dark brown fur but unmistakably hand-shaped. Not a paw, not claws, a hand. With a thumb and 4 fingers and what looked like fingernails instead of claws. Moving with purpose, reaching, grasping. I stopped about 20 feet away. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. A bear. Had to be a bear. Some kind of deformed bear, maybe. Except bears don't have hands like that. Bears don't have arms that long. Bears don't have shoulders that broad. Bears don't have that shape when they're lying down. This was something else, something I didn't have a name for, something that shouldn't exist. The creature was pinned under a massive tree trunk. Must have been an old growth pine, 2 feet in diameter at least. The tree lay across the creature's waist, crushing it into the packed snow, trapping it just like I'd been trapped. One leg was visible, twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. The knee bent the wrong way, bone showing through matted fur and torn flesh. Blood dark against the brown fur. Snow was packed around the creature up to its chest, compressed tight by the weight of the avalanche. There was blood everywhere. In the snow, on the creature's fur. Dark red, almost black in the bright sunlight. A lot of it. Too much of it. I could see a deep gash across its chest where the tree had struck it. 6 inches long, maybe more. The edges of the wound opening with each labored breath. The wound was bleeding steadily, staining everything around it. The chest rose and fell with shallow, labored breaths. Each breath looked like it took enormous effort, like every inhale was a battle, every exhale a small victory. The creature's face was gray, not brown like the fur on the rest of its body, gray with pain and cold and shock, the color of someone who's lost too much blood, who's going into shock, who's dying. Then it turned its head and looked at me, looked directly at me, and I saw the face clearly for the first time. Not quite human, but not animal either, something in between. The features were flat, broad, the nose wide and flat against the face, the mouth large, the brow heavy. But the eyes were what stopped me cold. Dark brown, almost black, and completely aware, intelligent. Looking at me with an expression I recognized immediately, an expression that was unmistakably human despite the face it appeared on. Fear and pain and desperation all mixed together. Looking at me the way a person looks at another person when they need help. When they're in trouble, when they're dying, every instinct I had was screaming at me to run. Get away from this thing, get as far away as possible. This was a Bigfoot, a real, actual Bigfoot. The thing people joke about, the thing people say doesn't exist, the thing people spend their whole lives searching for and never finding. And I was standing 20 feet away from one, alone, in the middle of nowhere. Nobody knew where I was, nobody was coming to help. But the look in its eyes stopped me from running. It was looking at me the way a person looks at another person, not the way an animal looks at a potential threat, not the way a predator looks at potential prey, the way a person looks at someone who might help them, someone who might save them, desperate, pleading, afraid, hoping. It made a weak gesture with its free hand, the one that wasn't trapped under the snow and the tree, not threatening, not aggressive, just reaching toward me. The movement was small, gentle, slow, almost like asking for help, like saying please, like begging. And I understood in that moment with perfect clarity that this creature was going to die. The injuries were too severe, the bleeding too heavy, the leg too badly broken, the chest wound too deep. It was going to die here in the snow, alone and in pain, unless someone helped it. Unless I helped it. And even if I did help, even if I did everything I possibly could, it was probably still going to die. The injuries were just too severe, too much damage, too much blood loss. I stood there frozen, arguing with myself. This thing could kill me. Probably would kill me if it got the chance. Bigfoot are supposed to be dangerous, strong, aggressive, 8 feet tall and 400 pounds of muscle. Everything I'd ever heard about them said to stay away, never approach one, never engage, never get close. But it wasn't going to get the chance. I could see that clearly. The Bigfoot was dying, right here, right now, in front of me. I checked what I had in my pack, took it off and opened it. Emergency blanket still there, first aid kit intact. Energy bars, water, matches, the tarp. All of it survived the avalanche. But none of it would really help with injuries this severe. I couldn't move a tree trunk this size, couldn't splint a leg that broken, couldn't close a wound that deep. Didn't have antibiotics for the infection that was probably already setting in. Couldn't do anything that would actually save this creature's life. But I couldn't just walk away either. Something about that look in his eyes wouldn't let me. This was a living thing in terrible pain, suffering, scared, dying. And I had the ability to do something, even if that something was just staying so it didn't die alone. Even if all I could do was make it slightly more comfortable, keep it warm, clean the wounds, sit with it. That had to count for something. That had to be worth something. I approached slowly, taking small steps, keeping my hands visible, talking softly. I had no idea if it could understand me, but it seemed like the right thing to do. The way you'd approach any injured animal, any scared creature. Calm, gentle, non-threatening. The Bigfoot watched me come closer but didn't move. Didn't try to threaten me or warn me off. It was too weak to be dangerous, too badly hurt to pose any real threat. And I think we both knew it. I knelt down in the snow about 5 feet away, close enough to help, but far enough to move if I needed to. The Bigfoot's eyes followed my every movement, watched me unpack the first aid kit, watched me assess the situation, trying to figure out how to help, where to even start with injuries this severe. The first thing I needed to do was get the tree off it. The Bigfoot couldn't move with that massive trunk lying across its body, couldn't even try to help itself. I started by digging away the snow from around its body, used my hands at first, then found a flat piece of wood from a broken branch to use as a makeshift shovel. The snow was packed hard from the avalanche. Each scoop took real effort. The creature watched me work but didn't make a sound. Just those eyes following my every movement, dark and intelligent and aware. After I got most of the snow cleared away, I could see the full extent of the situation. The tree trunk was massive, at least 2 feet in diameter, old-growth pine, heavy as concrete, dense wood that had been growing for decades or maybe centuries. I walked around it, trying to figure out if there was any way to shift it, put my shoulder against the trunk and pushed with everything I had, dug my boots into the snow and pushed until I thought my legs would give out. The trunk didn't budge even a fraction of an inch. Didn't even rock. It was too heavy. Way too heavy for one person to move. I found a thick, broken branch about 4 feet long, tested it, sturdy enough to use as a lever maybe. I wedged it under the trunk and put all my weight on it. The branch bent, but held. The trunk lifted maybe half an inch, just enough to see it was possible, but nowhere near enough to free the Bigfoot. I adjusted my position, tried again, same result, half an inch, not enough. The Bigfoot made a sound, soft, almost like trying to speak. It gestured with its free arm, showing me where to position the lever, pointing to a specific spot on the trunk. I moved the branch to where it indicated, wedged it deeper under the tree. This time when I pushed down on the branch, the Bigfoot used its free arm to push against the tree trunk from below. Between the two of us working together, the trunk lifted maybe 2 inches, just enough. The Bigfoot dragged itself backward, pulling free inch by agonizing inch. The sound it made during that movement was almost human. A cry of pain that made every hair on my body stand up, made my skin crawl, made my stomach turn. The kind of sound no living thing should have to make. Once it was clear of the tree, the Bigfoot collapsed onto the snow, breathing hard, chest heaving, body shaking. I stepped back quickly, giving it space, giving myself space too. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I'd just freed a Bigfoot from an avalanche. The absurdity of it was starting to hit me. This shouldn't be happening. This couldn't be happening. Bigfoot don't exist. Everyone knows that. Except one was lying right there in front of me, bleeding and broken and very, very real. I examined the injuries from about 10 feet away, still didn't trust it completely, still wasn't sure what it might do if it felt threatened. The leg was definitely broken, badly, compound fracture. The bone was visible through the torn fur and skin, white against the dark blood and brown fur. The kind of injury that would require surgery and pins and months of healing even with modern medicine. Out here in the wilderness, it was probably a death sentence. The chest wound was deep, 6 inches long at least, maybe more, still bleeding steadily. I could see the edges of the wound opening with each breath the Bigfoot took, opening and closing like a mouth, blood welling up with each movement, massive bruising across the torso and shoulders, dark purple spreading under the brown fur, spreading out from where the tree had hit. The Bigfoot was shivering, whole body trembling despite its thick fur coat. Hypothermia setting in. That was bad, really bad. When you start shivering that hard, it means your core temperature is dropping, means your body is fighting to stay warm, means you're in serious trouble. And with blood loss on top of it, the Bigfoot's body was fighting a losing battle. I knew these injuries would kill it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, infection would set in. The leg would go septic, or the chest wound would become infected, or hypothermia would finish the job, or blood loss, or shock, or any combination of all of them. There was no hospital out here, no way to get proper treatment even if I wanted to. And what was I supposed to do anyway? Call for a rescue and say I'd found an injured Bigfoot? They'd think I was crazy, delusional from the Avalanche, hit my head, made the whole thing up. Nobody would believe me. And even if they did, what then? They'd want to study it, poke it, prod it, put it in a zoo or a lab. The Bigfoot would spend whatever time it had left being treated like a specimen instead of a living thing. But I could try to make it comfortable at least. Keep it warm, clean the wounds, stop the bleeding if I could. That much I could do. The temperature was dropping, I could feel it. The sun was past its peak and starting its descent toward the horizon. The shadows were getting longer. The air was getting colder. We both needed to get out of the open wind, find shelter before nightfall, or we'd both freeze to death. I started looking around for somewhere we could take cover. The avalanche had knocked down a lot of trees, scattered them like matchsticks. About 20 yards down the slope, I spotted a section where several large pines had fallen against each other. The trunks had landed in a way that created a natural lean-to, 2 walls and part of a roof already formed by the fallen trees. It wasn't perfect, but it would block the wind. That was the main thing. I took the tarp from my pack and closed off one of the open sides, used paracord to secure it to the tree trunks. The emergency blanket, which was really just a thin sheet of reflective material, I draped across the other opening. It would help trap heat inside, reflect our body heat back at us instead of letting it radiate away into the cold air. Then I started gathering pine boughs for insulation, had to break them off nearby trees. Each branch required real effort to snap or twist off. My hands were already numb from the cold and the work, getting number by the minute. I gathered armfuls of boughs and created a thick bed on the ground inside the shelter. The boughs would insulate us from the frozen ground, keep our body heat from leaking away into the earth, keep us from freezing from below. I built a fire pit just outside the entrance, cleared away snow down to bare ground, scraping until I hit soil and rock. Arranged stones in a circle to contain the fire. Got my matches out and started gathering kindling. Small twigs, dry bark peeled from the underside of fallen logs where it had stayed dry. Dead pine needles, built a tiny teepee of kindling and lit it with one precious match. The kindling caught, started burning with small flames. I fed it carefully with slightly larger sticks as the flames grew. Too much too fast and I'd smother it, too little and it would die out. Had to find the right balance. Once I had a good base going, flames crackling and producing real heat, I added larger pieces of wood, branches as thick as my wrist, then my forearm, building it up slowly. The whole process of building the shelter and starting the fire took over an hour, maybe closer to 2. By the time I finished, I was exhausted, freezing. My fingers were so numb I could barely feel them. Had to hold them over the fire to get feeling back. The skin was white, frostbite starting to set in. But the shelter was as good as I was going to get it. Windproof, insulated, with a fire for warmth. Now I just had to get the Bigfoot inside. That turned out to be the hardest part of everything. The Bigfoot couldn't walk, not even a little bit. The broken leg made that impossible. Even trying to put the slightest weight on it made the creature cry out in pain, that same almost human sound that made my skin crawl. I tried to help it stand, letting it lean on me for support. Thought maybe we could hobble to the shelter together. It was far too heavy. Way too heavy. The weight nearly crushed me. I'm not a small person, but this thing must have weighed 400 pounds, maybe more. All muscle and bone under that thick fur. Dense, solid, heavy beyond anything I could support. I tried anyway, got my shoulder under its arm and pushed up with my legs. The Bigfoot tried to help, using its good leg to push. But it was no use. Too much weight, too much pain. We both almost fell. Finally, the Bigfoot started crawling on its own, using its arms to pull itself forward across the snow, dragging the broken leg behind, not putting any weight on it, just dragging it, leaving a trail of blood in the snow. Each movement clearly caused it terrible pain, but it kept going. Determined, strong-willed, brave in a way I'd never seen before. I walked alongside, one hand on its shoulder, ready to help if it fell, ready to steady it if it started to tip. The Bigfoot moved slowly, had to stop every few feet to rest, to gather strength for the next push. Each time it stopped, its breathing would get ragged, labored. Then it would gather itself and push forward again, pull itself a few more feet toward the shelter. It took 30 minutes to cover 20 yards, maybe longer. Time stopped having much meaning. Both of us were trembling with cold and exhaustion by the time we reached the shelter entrance. I helped guide the Bigfoot inside, onto the bed of pine boughs I'd prepared. It collapsed immediately onto the soft bed, breathing hard, chest heaving, body shaking. I wrapped the emergency blanket around its torso as best I could. The reflective material would help trap its body heat, keep it from losing more warmth to the cold air, keep hypothermia from getting worse. Fed more wood to the fire outside the entrance, built it up until it was roaring, until I could feel the heat radiating into the shelter. The Bigfoot's shivering started to ease slightly, just slightly, but it was something. I forced myself to stay awake that first night, keeping watch, keeping the fire alive. The Bigfoot was fading. I could see it, could feel it somehow. The way its breathing kept getting shallower, the way it couldn't seem to stay conscious for more than a few minutes at a time. It would open its eyes, look at me, then close them again. Each time I worried those eyes wouldn't open again. Around midnight, the Bigfoot reached out and touched my hand. I'd been sitting cross-legged near the fire, feeding it sticks to keep it going. The hand was massive but gentle. It just rested its fingers on mine, 3 fingers covering my entire hand. The touch was surprisingly warm despite how cold the Bigfoot had been earlier, despite the hypothermia and the blood loss and everything else. I understood what it was trying to say without any words being spoken. Thank you. I'm still not sure why, but I started crying. Just sitting there in the firelight with this dying creature's hand on mine, tears running down my face, freezing on my cheeks in the cold air. The whole situation was overwhelming. The avalanche, finding the Bigfoot, all of it. But more than that, there was something profound happening, something I couldn't quite put into words. This creature that shouldn't exist was thanking me for helping it. was reaching out across the impossible gap between our species, between our worlds, making a connection that felt deeper than anything I'd experienced with another human being. And I didn't even know why. At first light, I examined the injuries more carefully, used the growing daylight to really assess the damage. The chest wound needed to be cleaned and covered, needed to be treated somehow, or infection would definitely set in. I used water from melted snow, held my water bottle over the fire until the ice inside melted, waited for it to cool enough to use, then poured it over the wound, washing away blood and dirt and debris. The Bigfoot flinched when the water hit the wound but allowed me to work. Didn't try to stop me, didn't pull away, just watched me with those dark, knowing eyes. I tore strips from my spare shirt to use as bandages, pressed them against the wound to stop the bleeding, used more strips to hold the first layer in place, wrapped it around the Bigfoot's torso as well as I could manage. The broken leg was harder. I found the straightest branches I could, positioned them on either side of the leg, used torn fabric and paracord to bind them in place, creating a splint. It wasn't great, wasn't anywhere close to proper medical treatment, but it was better than nothing. It would keep the leg stable, keep the broken ends of bone from moving around and causing more damage. The whole time I worked, the Bigfoot watched me with those deep, knowing eyes. It sounds crazy to say this, but I felt like it understood everything I was doing. Not just that I was trying to help, but why. Why I was doing it, what it meant, like it could see into me somehow, see my intentions, see my fear and my hope and my determination all at once. The Bigfoot started making soft sounds later that morning. Not quite words, but not quite animal noises either. Something in between. Vocalizations that seemed to carry meaning even though I couldn't understand them. The sounds were gentle, questioning, like it was trying to talk to me, trying to communicate. I responded naturally, talking about what I was doing, explaining my actions even though I had no idea if it could understand my words, keeping up a steady stream of conversation because it felt like the right thing to do, the way you'd talk to a scared animal, or a patient in a hospital, or anyone who needed comfort. The Bigfoot began to gesture, pointing at things around the shelter, touching its chest, then pointing at me, touching my hand, then pointing at the fire, making connections. Slowly, I realized it was trying to teach me something, trying to show me things, communicate something important. At one point, it pointed at a patch of plants visible through the shelter entrance. Green leaves poking up through the snow, made eating motions with its hand, then pointed at its chest wound. The gesture was clear. These plants could help. I recognized the plant as yarrow. I'd read somewhere that Native Americans used it to stop bleeding, crushed it, and applied it to wounds. I gathered some of the plants, brought them back to the shelter. The Bigfoot showed me through gestures how to prepare it, crushing the leaves between my palms, working them until they were pulpy, then applying the pulp directly to the wound. I did what it showed me, applied the crushed yarrow to the chest wound. Within minutes, the bleeding slowed significantly, almost stopped completely. Over the next few days, the Bigfoot taught me other things about the forest, showed me through gestures which bark could be eaten when food was scarce, how to find grubs under logs for protein. The grubs were disgusting, but they were calories. They were survival. Pointed out animal trails I would never have noticed on my own, faint paths through the snow that deer or elk had used. Indicated which snow was safe to melt for drinking water based on color and texture. I realized this creature had survival knowledge far beyond anything I'd learned in 6 years of winter photography, beyond anything I'd learned in wilderness survival courses, beyond anything I'd read in books. It lived in these mountains year-round, knew every secret of staying alive here, every plant, every animal sign, every trick for finding food and water and shelter. And it was teaching me, sharing that knowledge freely even though it was dying. My supplies were running low by day 4. The energy bars were gone. I'd rationed them carefully, but there were only 6 to start with. Now they were gone, and I was getting hungry, really hungry. The grubs helped, but they weren't enough. My left ankle was badly sprained from the avalanche, something I'd been ignoring while focusing on the Bigfoot. But it was getting worse, swelling, turning purple. Walking was agony. Frostbite was starting to form on 3 of my fingers. The tips were white and numb, dead-looking. When I held them over the fire, I couldn't feel the heat, couldn't feel anything. That was a bad sign. Frostbite leads to gangrene. Gangrene leads to amputation. Or worse, I needed to get to a hospital, needed proper medical treatment. But I couldn't abandon the Bigfoot. I kept thinking about turning back, trying to reach the cabin. It was maybe 5 miles away, maybe more. With my ankle the way it was, that would take hours, maybe a full day of painful walking. But then what? The Bigfoot would die alone, would die here in this shelter without anyone to keep the fire going, without anyone to bring it water or clean its wounds. That felt wrong. That felt like betrayal. And truthfully, I wasn't sure I could make it back alone anyway. My ankle was getting worse every day. My fingers were turning black. I was weak from lack of food, getting weaker. The cold was taking its toll. Maybe we were both dying here. Maybe this shelter would be a tomb for both of us. But at least we wouldn't be alone. I started to feel a strange connection to the creature, something I'd never felt before. Not with another person, not with any animal, something different, deeper. The way it looked at me wasn't animal-like at all. There was intelligence there, awareness, understanding. When I struggled with tasks, it showed concern, tried to help in whatever small ways it could. One night I was shaking badly from cold. The fire had burned low while I was gathering more wood. I was too exhausted to build it back up right away, just sat there shivering, too tired to move, too cold to think clearly. The Bigfoot pulled me close to share body heat, used its good arm to draw me against its chest. I was terrified at first. This thing could crush me without even trying, could snap my neck with one hand, could kill me in a dozen different ways. But then I realized how warm its fur was, how gentle it was being, how carefully it was holding me, like I was precious, like I mattered. I fell asleep against its chest, listening to its heartbeat, deep and slow and steady, like a drum keeping time. I woke up hours later feeling safer than I had in days. The Bigfoot's arm was draped over me like a blanket, protecting me even though it was the one dying, even though it was the one who needed protection. There was something profound in that gesture, something that made me understand this creature wasn't just an animal. It was a person, different from me, but still a person, with thoughts and feelings and the capacity for compassion. Despite everything I tried, the Bigfoot was getting weaker. I could see it happening day by day, hour by hour. The leg wasn't healing. How could it? Infection was setting in despite the yarrow, despite cleaning the wound, despite everything. I could smell it. That sweet, rotten smell that means tissue is dying, means the body is losing the fight. The Bigfoot slept more and more, ate less and less. Sometimes it would look at me and I could see it knew what was happening, knew it was dying. There was no fear in its eyes when it looked at death, just acceptance, understanding, maybe even peace. Like it had made peace with this, like it was ready. I refused to accept it, kept tending the wounds even though they weren't healing, kept bringing water even though it barely drank anymore, kept talking, even though I wasn't sure it could hear me anymore. Told it about my life, my work, stupid stories about nothing, just filled the silence with words because silence felt like giving up. The Bigfoot would touch my face sometimes when I was talking, reach up with its hand and just rest it against my cheek. So gently I barely felt it. Those touches felt like it was trying to comfort me, like it knew I was struggling with watching it die, like it was trying to tell me it was okay, that this was natural, that this was just part of the cycle. One afternoon, the Bigfoot took my hand and held it over its heart. I could feel the heartbeat through the thick fur, slower than it should be. Weaker, each beat more labored than the last. Then it placed my hand over my own heart, made a gesture like pushing away, then bringing close. Push and pull, separate and together. I didn't understand at first, couldn't figure out what it was trying to show me. It repeated the gesture, this time with its eyes closed. Peaceful expression on its face despite the pain it must have been feeling. Pointing to the trees visible through the shelter entrance, to the snow, to the sky, then back to its heart, then to mine, showing me something, teaching me something. I sat there confused, watching it point at everything around us. Then it hit me like a physical blow. Everything was connected. Everything was part of the same life. The trees, the snow, the Bigfoot, me. All of it one thing, not separate, not distinct, just different expressions of the same underlying reality. The same energy, the same existence. We weren't isolated beings struggling alone. We were all part of one vast interconnected whole. The Bigfoot showed me how to simply sit and observe, not thinking about the past, not worrying about the future, just being present, just existing in the current moment. At first I couldn't do it. My mind raced with worry and fear. What if I couldn't get back? What if the Bigfoot died? What if I died out here? All these thoughts spinning and spinning. But gradually, sitting beside the dying creature, watching how it existed in the moment without fear or regret, I began to understand. The forest had its own rhythm, its own quiet wisdom. The Bigfoot had lived its entire life in harmony with that rhythm. It never fought against the cold, the hunger, the hardship. It simply existed within it, accepted it, found peace in it, found beauty in it. One night the Bigfoot was clearly in terrible pain. I could see it in the way its body tensed, the way its breathing came in short, sharp gasps, the way its hand clenched and unclenched. I wanted desperately to make it better, to take the pain away, felt helpless and frustrated and angry. There was nothing I could do, nothing that would actually help, nothing that would ease its suffering. The Bigfoot took my hand and held it firmly, looked directly into my eyes, made a gesture like waves, rising and falling, up and down, over and over, rising, falling, coming, going, never stopping, but always changing, always moving. I understood immediately. Pain comes and goes like waves. It rises, it peaks, it falls, it passes. Nothing lasts forever. Everything changes. Everything flows. The Bigfoot wasn't trying to escape the pain, wasn't trying to fight it or push it away or deny it. It was just letting it be what it was. Letting it rise and fall like waves on a shore. Knowing it would pass, knowing everything passes eventually. This acceptance gave it a kind of peace I'd never seen before. Not resignation, not giving up. Something different, something deeper. And understanding that pain was part of the flow of things, like everything else. I admitted to the Bigfoot one day that I was terrified. The words just poured out of me. Scared of dying out here, scared of failing, scared of being alone if it died, scared of what would happen to me. All of it came tumbling out. The Bigfoot touched my forehead gently, then touched its own, then gestured to the shadows the firelight made on the shelter walls. The shadows danced and changed with every flicker of the flames, shifting, moving, never staying the same. The Bigfoot showed me how they weren't real, just light and darkness playing together, creating shapes that looked solid but weren't, that looked real but had no substance. Fear was like that, real enough to feel, real enough to affect us, but not permanent, not solid, just shadows, just illusions created by the mind. The Bigfoot had no fear of death. I could see that clearly now. It was simply moving through one part of existence toward another, transitioning, changing form. The fear I felt was my own creation, my mind making shadows and treating them as real. My mind creating obstacles that didn't actually exist. The Bigfoot showed me that by being present, by accepting, by letting go of the stories we tell ourselves about what should or shouldn't be. The Bigfoot showed me how to appreciate small moments, the taste of clean snow melting on your tongue, the warmth of the fire on your face, the sound of wind moving through trees. It would close its eyes and just listen, completely absorbed in the sound, not thinking about it, not analyzing it, just experiencing it fully, being with it completely. I tried to do the same, found myself noticing things I'd always ignored. The particular crackle different woods make when they burn. Pine sounds different from birch. Birch sounds different from oak. Each one has its own voice, its own song. The weight of falling snow is distinct from rain. Heavier, softer, more intentional somehow. The absolute silence that comes in the moments between storms, when even the wind holds its breath, when the whole world seems to pause. These weren't big revelations, just tiny observations about the world. But they felt profound somehow, like the Bigfoot was showing me that life wasn't in the big moments, not in the achievements or the milestones or the things we think matter. It was in these small ones. The ones we usually rush past without noticing. The ones we dismiss as unimportant. Those were actually where life lived, where existence actually happened. I'd been clinging to hope that somehow the Bigfoot would survive, kept telling myself rescue would come, that we'd both get out of this, that someone would find us, that everything would be okay. But one morning, the Bigfoot was barely conscious. Its breathing was so shallow, I had to watch carefully to see if its chest was moving at all. Had to lean close to hear the faint whisper of air moving in and out. It pulled me close with the last of its strength, placed its hand over my heart one final time. The gesture was clear now. I understood what it had been trying to teach me all along. Let go. Accept what is. Stop fighting against reality. Stop trying to control things that can't be controlled. Just be with what is. Just accept the flow of things. I started crying. All the fear and exhaustion and grief poured out. Tears running down my face, freezing on my cheeks. The Bigfoot just held my hand, steady and calm, not trying to make me stop crying, not trying to fix anything, just being with me, just accepting my grief the way it had accepted its own death, with peace, with understanding, with love. In that moment, I understood something fundamental about existence. Fighting the inevitable only caused more suffering. The Bigfoot wasn't fighting, wasn't resisting, wasn't trying to hold on to life through sheer will. It was accepting, moving with what was happening instead of against it. And there was real peace in that acceptance, not the peace of giving up, the peace of understanding, the peace of wisdom. The Bigfoot's breathing became labor that afternoon, irregular. Each breath sounded like it took enormous effort, like climbing a mountain, like the hardest thing in the world. I sat beside it, holding its massive hand in both of mine, kept the fire burning bright, kept talking softly, told it everything I'd learned from it, everything it had taught me. Thanked it for saving my life in ways it never intended, in ways that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with learning how to actually live. The sun was setting, light filtered through the trees in golden shafts, catching the snow and making everything glow, making everything beautiful. The Bigfoot looked toward the light, its body relaxed. Some of the tension I hadn't even noticed before left its shoulders, left its face. Its expression became peaceful, almost happy. Its eyes found mine one last time, dark and deep and full of something I can only describe as love. With its final breaths, the Bigfoot spoke. The sounds weren't quite words, but I understood them somehow, felt them more than heard them, understood them in my bones, in my heart. It said something that sounded like all together. The words came slowly, painfully, with great effort, then a sound like let go, let be, teaching me one final time, reminding me one final time of everything it had shown me. And finally, unmistakably clear despite the failing breath and the pain, it said, "Thank you." Those two words hit me like a hammer. Thank you. For what? For staying? For trying to help? For being with it during its final days? I didn't know. Maybe all of that, maybe none of that, maybe just thank you for being, for existing, for connecting across the impossible gap between our species. Its eyes closed slowly, the chest rose one final time, held for a moment, then fell, then was still. No more breath, no more movement, just stillness, just peace. I sat there holding its hand as it grew cold, unable to move, unable to do anything but sit with the weight of what had just happened, the weight of loss, the weight of love, the weight of understanding. I stayed with the body through the night, kept the fire going even though the Bigfoot was past needing warmth. I didn't want to leave it alone in the dark. That felt wrong somehow, disrespectful, like abandoning a friend. I felt a strange peace despite the grief, despite the loss. Everything the Bigfoot had shown me was still there, still alive inside me. The acceptance, the connection, the letting go, the understanding that death wasn't an ending, just a transition. I understood now in a way I hadn't before that death wasn't the opposite of life. It was part of life, part of the cycle, part of the flow. The Bigfoot wasn't gone. Not really, it had just changed form, become part of the mountain, part of the trees, part of the snow, part of everything. Still here, still present, just in a different way. The next morning I heard voices, human voices calling my name, a search party looking for me, finding me. Part of me didn't want to be found, wanted to stay in that space of understanding, that quiet place the Bigfoot had shown me. But I called back anyway. Let them find me, let them rescue me. Because that was part of the flow too, accepting what was happening, not fighting against reality. They were shocked at my condition, started treating me immediately, wrapping my frostbitten fingers, splinting my ankle, giving me water and food, asking questions I couldn't really answer. They asked about the creature's body lying in the shelter. I told them it was a bear that had died in the avalanche. They didn't look too closely, were focused on getting me down the mountain safely, getting me to a hospital. I spent a week in the hospital, frostbite treatment on 3 fingers, rehydration through an IV, observation for hypothermia and infection. Kept thinking about those final days with the Bigfoot. Everything seemed different now, like I was seeing the world through new eyes. Colors were brighter, sounds were clearer, everything felt more present, more real, more alive. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive, called it a miracle, said I shouldn't have survived that long in those conditions. But I knew the real miracle was everything the Bigfoot had taught me, not survival skills or wilderness knowledge, something deeper, something about how to be alive, how to exist, how to flow with reality instead of fighting against it. When I recovered, I found I couldn't go back to my old life the same way. Everything felt different. I looked different, sounded different, moved through the world differently, started living more simply, appreciating smaller things. A warm shower felt like a miracle. Hot coffee tasted like the best thing in the world. The way sunlight looked on walls was endlessly fascinating. I stopped fighting against difficulties, learned to accept them as part of the flow. Lost a photography job? That was okay, things change. Equipment breaks? I'd get new equipment eventually. Relationship ends? People move through our lives like seasons. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they go. When fear came, I remembered the shadows on the wall, just shadows, not real, not permanent. When pain came, I remembered the waves, rising and falling, always changing, always passing. I think about the Bigfoot every day, not with sadness, but with gratitude, with love, with appreciation for everything it taught me. It taught me that life wasn't about fighting to stay alive, wasn't about accumulating things or achieving goals or checking boxes. It was about being fully present in each moment while you're here, about accepting the rise and fall, the coming and going, about recognizing the connection between all living things, about understanding that we're all one, all together, always have been. I never told anyone the full truth about what happened up there. How could I explain that a dying Bigfoot in the snow had taught me more about life than years of human experience? How could I make anyone understand what I'd learned, what I'd experienced? They'd think I was crazy, delusional from the trauma, making things up. So I kept it to myself, kept it private, kept it sacred. But I carry those lessons with me everywhere, in how I breathe, in how I observe, in how I let things be. The Bigfoot's last words echo in my mind constantly. All one, all together, let go, let be. Sometimes in the quiet of early morning, I swear I can still feel its hand touching mine. That gentle pressure, that steady warmth, that profound connection that crossed impossible boundaries. And I understand now, truly understand, that nothing that profound ever really dies. It just changes form, becomes part of everything else, continues on in different ways. The Bigfoot is in the mountains I photograph, in the snow that falls, in the silence between storms, in me, in everyone I meet, in everything I do. Still teaching, still showing, still guiding. I'm different now, quieter, more present, less afraid, less worried, more accepting, more at peace. People sometimes ask what happened to me up there in the mountains, what changed me. I tell them I survived an avalanche, got lucky. But the truth is something else entirely. The truth is I found something in that snow, not just a dying Bigfoot, but a teacher, a guide, a wise being who showed me what really matters when everything else is stripped away. Connection, presence, acceptance, let go, let be, all one, all together. That's what the Bigfoot taught me. That's what I carry now. And sometimes when I'm out in the wilderness with my camera, I look around at the trees and the snow and the sky, and I remember we're all one, all together, always have been, always will be. For more interesting stories, check this out.